Support WrestleTalk!
Give us a subscribe.
Keith Lee is the best around. Nothing's gonna have to keep him down. Apart from a Roman Reigns spear, which did eventually put him down.
But only for 3 seconds.
But we'll get to that. What a weekend Keith Lee has had. He had a great showing on SmackDown. Like I think in the lead up to Survivor Series, aside from Adam Cole, he has been pushed as like the guy of NXT because he's always the one to like end off the show with a big dive over the top or a big move or something. Then the following day, incredible in War Games. And then he pinned Seth Rollins and then had an incredible back and forth with Roman Reigns. He was the last guy for NXT.
He was the second to last guy in the match.
Exactly.
And I think that's big kind of glowing summation of Keith Lee as a character to be like, well, you've just hung in there with the two guys that WWE thinks are the faces of the company.
Oh, yeah.
Like Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns are the faces of both brands.
Absolutely.
So to go over Seth Rollins is amazing, which hopefully can further a story with Seth Rollins' inevitable heel turn that you must feel is coming. And then to almost pin Roman Reigns as well is just insane.
Yeah, to
go from a guy who like a month ago, I'm sure WWE didn't think that people knew who Keith Lee was. Yeah. And obviously his entrance and his involvement in this match, and from the crowd in Chicago, showed like, I think across the board, they kind of were very into the NXT lot in general as a very sort of wrestling savvy crowd. But Keith Lee especially was so over.
They put all of their eggs into Rhea Ripley, Shayna Baszler, and Keith Lee. Like those were their top 3 guys. Yeah. And of those 3, I would say it was definitely down to Lee and Baszler, because Baszler won the main event of the night. Because Rhea Ripley, although she was the sole survivor for Team NXT, she did win it by cheating wildly.
Oh yeah.
Like it was the
not cheating, canniness.
Bizarrest match I've ever seen in all fair. Like bizarrest choice of booking where you're like, okay. But we'll get on to that. But for Lee, it really felt like you've got to be heading to the main roster. Yeah. Because this felt like you were putting him over so strong that now going back to NXT, going back to that C show, almost feels like you deserve to be on this sort of like grand stage. You should be in matches against Roman Reigns. You should be in matches against Seth Rollins. You should be in matches with Brock Lesnar. You should be in matches with The Fiend. You should be in matches with the top brass of WWE.
Yeah. However, I would counter by saying that if the point of Survivor Series, which you've got, I think, considering NXT's showing here, you've got to be considering that the whole thing is to funnel people back to Wednesday. Choosing Keith Lee to have this big moment, because Tommaso Ciampa, I think, is already sort of a known quantity and kind of a star, and Adam Cole is already really over and really well known. I think all they're doing is making sure that there's like 5 or 6 names in NXT that people are going to go there for that aren't called Finn Balor and potentially Kevin Owens if he ever gets back. That's what I mean. So they don't have to rely so much on the last few weeks of people from the main roster will turn up and you'll see the OC on here and Seth Rollins is here and Becky Lynch is here. Whoa! Yeah. To make these guys household names and make people be like, well, I have to see more of Keith Lee.
This show was like the best advert for NXT they've ever done.
Oh yeah.
They won decisively.
Yeah.
Raw got 1 win and it was on the pre-show.
We were blinded by the feeling of letdown from WWE, but how we forgot to the sort of like the Jinder Mahal litmus test of like, you can be a WWE champion if WWE's trying to sell you something.
That's it.
Like,
Mansoor can get a big push if we're doing shows in Saudi Arabia. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. We didn't factor that into the equation whatsoever.
The Mahal test.
The Mahal test. And unfortunately, they were deathly quiet for this main event, which was Becky Lynch versus Shayna Baszler versus Bayley, and the crowd were dead for it. And I am sad to say I don't think it was a good match either. It felt really rehearsed, but rehearsed to the point where you'd forget what steps you were doing next. So you were out of position.
It was a bit dull.
It was a bit dull.
It was a
lot.
It was
so slow.
It was too much. It was so much one-on-one. They clearly couldn't gel their different styles.
In the end, Baszler threw Becky on top of the table and then went back into the ring and she tapped out Bayley
with a
Kirifuda clutch.
Yeah,
and that was it.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a real damp ending. Yeah. To what was already a pretty flat match. There was a moment when Bayley hit the Bayley to belly and Baszler kicked out. And going by the crowd, you wouldn't have known that Bayley hit her finisher or that Baszler just kicked out of her finisher.
Because it barely looks like a finisher. Big E does that like normal. Like it's a rubbish finisher. I think the finish of chucking Becky on top of the announce table, I don't know whether they were hoping it would break or what. It just didn't feel like enough to take her out of the match, and then to sort of roll back in and go straight into the finish. The tempo never built to a point where you were like, oh, I care. Everything here just sort of wasn't either given enough time, or like the pace never picked up enough to make those moments feel like it was like, we're close to the end, we're close to the end, we're close to the end. It was just like, okay, and now the finish.
And then, to kind of make matters worse, Baszler celebrates with the title, and Becky just beats her up and puts her through a table with a leg drop.
Yeah.
So Becky stands tall.
Your team massively lost.
Yeah.
You screwed the pooch.
Yeah, and they put over as like, well, she didn't beat Becky.
I mean, she did. She put her on the table.
Yeah.
That took her out
She
of the
took her
match.
out, yeah.
Yeah.
When this match was announced as the main event, I was fully expecting Ronda Rousey. I was
Yeah.
like, the reason why this is the main event is because of Ronda Rousey. Actually, to WWE's credit, them being the main event doesn't feel like it's done for women's evolution or women's revolution and stuff.
It feels right. Becky's the biggest thing in the company.
It feels like, yeah, this is the biggest match we've got. It should be the main event.
Yeah.
And quite rightly, it should have been the main event. But I did, in my mind, think of like, I think that we are going to get a Ronda Rousey return here.
Yeah.
And I do think the crowd would have forgiven a lot of they'd essentially forgotten how boring the match was, because you'd have been left with that moment at the end. As it turns out, we didn't get that, and it just had a bit of a damp ending, and then Becky standing tall didn't really get over either.
Yeah.
So the crowd had just sort of left in a,
There's like a couple of moments where bits and bobs happened, but it fell so flat. And then to have a weird ending where you're like, well, Baszler won, and she doesn't even get to stand tall. Becky's like, whoa, you came here to my house. It's like, yeah, and won!
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. But overall, I did enjoy the show. I thought it was a very, very solid 4 out of 5 pay-per-view. Maybe on the sort of low end of the 4 out of 5.
It felt like an advertisement, a very good advertisement, and a very fun show to watch, as long as you unshackle yourself from the story of it. Imagine a year's time going back and watching random matches of this on YouTube or on WWE Network, like taken away completely from the day-to-day watching of Raw, SmackDown, NXT, and the shows in general. You'll just be like, that's a great match.
Yeah.
With like going in with no context, it's a great little match.
Yeah. Right, let's get into your super chat. Nathan again says, and here's Laurie Blake with the joke of the day. Come on, mate, you're a former stand-up.
Yeah, I don't remember my own joke. I had a mate who claimed he had a small red flower in the place of genitalia. It's poppycock, I say.
There it is, ladies and gentlemen. There it is.
One of my favourite old jokes.
Yeah. I used to have a job in a calendar factory. I got 5 for taking days off. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for all of your super chats. It's been a wonderful time hanging out with y'all. I am Luke, and this is El Fakador Laurie Blake, and that was wrestling.